What's going on, Transit? Thank you so much for joining in with us today for this episode of Transit Live. Well, hey everyone, it is great to see you. Well, I can't really see you, but I'm hoping you're there. Are you there? If you're there, give us a wave. Well, I can't see that either. I'm just glad that you're here, and I hope that you are excited about today's episode of Transit. We've got a lot to talk about today, just really quick. And the main thing I want to talk about today is that if you're an 8th grader watching this, this is your last Sunday in Transit or watching Transit, because today is the day that you celebrate the end of your time as an 8th grader in Transit, as you get ready for a brand new school year as a high school student, as a freshman in high school. Today, you are going to enjoy the content that we're going to have today. You're going to head to your small group. You guys are going to celebrate everything that you've experienced together as a small group. And next Sunday, you're going to officially be an inside out. Guys, for everyone else, I know that this is the end of summer for you and you're getting ready to go back to school. In fact, some of you are already in school. Some of you are going to be learning digitally online. This is a crazy time. And I just want you to know that here at Transit, we are for you. I know that this has been a tough season, but thank you for hanging in there with us. Thank you for finding ways to stay connected to your small group. We are so excited about what is next. Here's some cool info on what's next. One of the big things I want you to know about is that September 13th, Sunday, September 13th, Transit is going to be open again. You're going to be able to be here with us and have the band on stage and do all of the stuff that we love to do together. Instead of it being online, we're going to be in person, and we can't wait to have you here. It's going to be a great time getting back together. Now, for some of you, you might not be ready to come back to Transit and be here in this room with all of us, and that's totally okay. We are going to be working on a hybrid experience so that you can still get the content and you can even join your small group digitally. It's going to be really great, and we're going to figure out new ways to have more fun and continue to gather together for Transit. If it's your first time checking out Transit and all this information for you is a little, maybe too much, I just want you to know one simple thing. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you're joining in with us. And what I would love to do is send you a $5 gift card just for checking us out today. If you look at the description below, there's a link and a phone number in there with some directions. And I just want you to let us know that you're here so that we can get you connected to Transit and so we can send you one of those $5 gift cards in the mail. Guys, we have a great day planned for you, especially for you 8th graders, since it's your last Sunday in Transit. We are wrapping up this great series that we have been in called Big Picture. I can't wait for you to hear from one of my great friends as we get into the content today. And then right after that, we'll head to small groups. So let's get started. Part 5, Big Picture.
I don't know what to pick. Oh man, some Lays, some pretzels, popcorn too. Cool Ranch Doritos, we meet again. I don't know. Oh, hey guys. We're in the last week of our series on a guy in the Bible named Joseph. And it's called Big Picture. Well, Joseph had a lot of wild and weird and unbelievable things happen to him, good and bad. But all along, God was working toward the bigger picture in his life. The bigger picture Joseph couldn't see. Before we get into the last part of Joseph's story today, let me ask you a question. Have you ever tried to get a little payback on someone? Maybe a younger sibling who stole your favorite sweater without asking, or a friend who spread a rumor about you, or the guy in your small group who's always playing pranks on you? I have. You see, when I was in middle school, my younger brother and I did not get along at all. We were always pushing each other's buttons. We were always trying to get back at the other. But there was one day where I had a few friends over. We were just hanging out, playing Mario Kart. I was crushing it on Rainbow Road, and we were just having a good time, minding our own business, when all of a sudden, my little brother walks into the living room and just turns off the TV. Imagine that. Imagine being in first place on Rainbow Road, and all of a sudden the TV, poof, off. I was a little upset. That's worse than any blue shell ever. That's worse than your best friend winning. I can let her have that and then beat her later. But to just have the television turn off and not know if I ever win, I was, how do you say, fuming. So mad. My blood was boiling. My face was red. Everything was swirling around me. Horrified, furious, irate, enraged. I couldn't believe the audacity that he had to walk into the living room and just turn the TV off as if I wasn't crushing it. So as my little brother is laughing to himself, I do what maybe some of us do in our weakest moments. I look around for the first thing to throw, because I wanted to get back at him. And the first thing I see is a Nerf football. So I pick up the football, and I'm not thinking through my actions, but I'm thinking enough to think, I just want to teach him a lesson. And I throw that football across the living room. And apparently I was a little bit angry because it had a lot of force. And as I see the football traveling through the living room very quickly, I'm thinking this could cause more damage than I am prepared to deal with. And my brother sees it coming right towards his face, and the football hits him right between the eyes, right on the nose, and all of a sudden, his nose is bleeding, he's screaming, my friends are appalled at the situation they just witnessed. My mom comes running into the living room, she sees blood on his face, guilt on mine, and guess who got in trouble that day? Me. You know, your story might not be just like mine, but I bet you can relate. How do I know? Because in big or small ways, we've all been wronged. We've all been hurt. We've all been frustrated. We've all had someone do something to us or say something about us or treat us in a way that makes us want one thing and one thing only: payback. We want the other person to experience the same amount of pain or frustration or embarrassment that we experience because of them. Here's the thing, we all have the power to pay back. We not only have the potential to want payback, we have the power to actually do it. Sometimes that payback is public. We do something directly and openly to the person who wronged us. Maybe that's confronting them in the hallway with a big fight, or tagging them in a nasty post on social media, or doing something to embarrass them in front of someone else. That kind of payback isn't hard to recognize. It's out there for the world to see. And that's the way we want it to be. Sometimes the payback is more passive, meaning it's a little less obvious and a little more behind the other person's back. Maybe that's spreading a rumor about them, or moving seats at the lunch table, or just rolling your eyes when they walk away. Though the other person may not recognize it or feel the consequence of it right away, you're still getting the payback you're looking for in a more subtle way. Or maybe for you, the payback is just in your head. You haven't taken a step to actually do the payback, either publicly or passively, but you think about it all the time. You're constantly setting up scenarios in your mind of how to get the payback you want, and even though you may not actually take the steps to make it happen, it still consumes you. I know this all sounds harsh, but we're all friends here, right? So can we just be honest with each other and admit we've all felt that way a time or two? There's just something about payback that feels fair to us. But just because payback feels fair, it doesn't mean it is fair. It doesn't mean it's what's best for us. In fact, I think there's a better approach we could all take if we put down our power to pay back. Now, if there was anyone who had reason for wanting payback, it was our guy, Joseph. His story is full of people betraying him, lying about him, and causing him years of pain and suffering that he didn't deserve. To give you a quick recap, check out these photos we've been using in this series. Joseph was one of a dozen sons, but his father Jacob loved him the most. Talk about some awkward family dynamics. Because of that, his brothers got so mad that they threw him in a well and eventually sold him into slavery, where he ended up in Egypt. Then, when he was actually doing a good enough job where he was working to get a promotion in the house of this guy named Potiphar, Potiphar's wife made a move on Joseph. Joseph turned her down, so she made up a lie that got him thrown into prison. And there he stayed for several years before finally getting released and promoted to work for the Pharaoh. Whew, that's a lot, right? Now, if I put myself in Joseph's sandals for a minute, I can tell you what I'd be thinking about during all those years of slavery and separation from my family and imprisonment. I'd probably be thinking about the payback that I would give to everyone who wronged me if I got the chance. Wouldn't you? So let's pick Joseph's story back up and find out exactly what he did. At this point, Joseph was doing much better. He had not only been released from prison, he had been elevated to second in command over all of Egypt. Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of the distribution of food throughout the entire Egyptian empire. And that was a big deal because this was during a period of intense famine in the land. The famine, or food shortage, was so bad that people from far away started making the journey to Egypt to find food so that they wouldn't starve. And Joseph was the guy they were coming to for help. Now, of all the people in all the world, guess who showed up one day to ask Joseph for food? None other than his brothers. The very same guys who sold him into slavery years ago. What are the chances? While Joseph immediately recognized his brothers, they didn't realize who they were speaking with. It had been so many years since they'd seen him, they certainly didn't imagine the brother they turned into a slave would be a man with so much power in Egypt. And yet, there stood Joseph in a position of complete power before his brothers. They all needed his help. They all needed him to save their lives, and in that moment, he had the power to pay back all the wrongs they'd committed against him. This was the moment that Joseph could have been dreaming of, the moment when payback would finally be his. But take a look at what happened next. Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you." So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly, the Egyptians could hear him, and word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer, and he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives." You can live in the region of Goshen, where you can be near me with all your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and everything you own. I will take care of you there, for there are still 5 years of famine ahead of us. Otherwise, you, your household, and all your animals will starve. Wait, what? Joseph could have done literally anything he wanted to his brothers. He could have paid them back times 1,000,000 for what they had done to him. He could have left them to starve or snapped his fingers and had them thrown in prison or even killed. That's how much power he had to pay them back. Instead, Joseph took a different path. He chose forgiveness. Can you imagine how surprised Joseph's brothers must have been? One minute they found out that their brother Joseph was alive, and then in the next he was embracing them rather than giving them what they deserved. Here's what I think we can learn from this part of Joseph's story. When you can't see the bigger picture, choose to forgive. Joseph's response to his brothers gives us a powerful example of how God wants us all to deal with the people who wrong us. We may never know why they did what they did. They may never apologize for the hurt or embarrassment they've caused us. There are details of the bigger picture that we'll never see or understand. But we still have a choice: forgiveness or payback. We have the power to choose. Think of it this way. If you're in a relationship with another person, let's say a parent, a friend, a sibling, a boyfriend or girlfriend, anyone, there's something that connects the two of you. There's a bridge. But when someone wrongs or hurts you, that bridge is suddenly broken. It becomes shaky and the connection between the two of you is damaged. Then you're left with a choice. You can either burn the bridge, breaking it down completely by paying back wrong for wrong or hurt for hurt, or you can build the bridge, reestablishing your connection with things like forgiveness and grace and peace. Of course, I'm not saying you just keep rebuilding bridges with people who have hurt you deeply and repeatedly. Sometimes the best way to actually choose forgiveness is to set some healthy boundaries or talk about the wrongs done to you with someone who can help, like your small group leader. That's a great place to start. But when it's possible, it's our job to lay down our right to pay back and instead choose forgiveness. Joseph could have made the choice to prove a point. He could have fought to be right. He could have chosen not to help his brothers and burn the bridge between them. But instead, he chose to forgive them. And that changed everything. When you can't see the bigger picture, choose to forgive. I'm sure some of you are hearing this and thinking, yeah, that sounds nice, But how can someone actually do that? How can you choose forgiveness instead of payback? That's a really fair question because honestly, this is really hard stuff. It's hard to choose to be a bridge builder rather than a bridge burner. And what can make it even harder is when we can't see the bigger picture, when we don't know all the details or the full story about the situation we're in. So how do we start? We start small. Practice extending things like grace, forgiveness, and peace to others in small ways. When a friend teases you and hurts your feelings, when your sibling eats the last piece of cake that you'd been saving, when your parents snap at you for something that wasn't even your fault, practice choosing forgiveness rather than responding with payback. The more you do this in the small, everyday things, the easier it will be to do it when the bigger things come your way. Also, don't wait for an apology to forgive. Think about your own life for a second. Who has wronged you recently? You don't need to wait for them to apologize to forgive. You don't need to wait for them to make the first move and say sorry for what they've done. The beauty of forgiveness is that you can do it on your own, right now. You can make a move to forgive first so that you can move on. Lastly, pursue forgiveness. We can't always control the way people treat us, but we can control the way we treat them in response. We can pursue forgiveness. What would it look like for you to forgive someone who has wronged or hurt you this week? Maybe it's an outward step, like starting a conversation or inviting them to sit with you again or unblocking them on social media. Or maybe it's a more inward step, a prayer you pray in your heart, or a choice you make to not say rude things, or a conversation with your small group leader to help you. Whatever it is, take one step this week to pursue forgiveness rather than payback in your relationships. Of course, forgiveness is not always easy, but the good news is we have a God who is the best at forgiving. He's forgiven each and every one of us, and He wants to help us do the same for others. And when we ask for His help forgiving someone, He will always give it. Today, maybe that's where you need to start. Ask God to help you forgive someone who has wronged you so you can start building a bridge toward forgiveness rather than payback. Remember, even when you can't see the bigger picture, choose to forgive. Joseph's story is pretty crazy, right? I mean, he was part of a family in conflict. He was tossed into a well and sold into slavery by his own brothers. He fought off repeated invitations to have an affair with his boss's wife and was thrown into prison for something he didn't even do. Even though he went through all those crazy experiences in his life, Joseph eventually gained enough power to help and even forgive the family who got him into the mess in the first place. In the middle of all this stuff, Joseph couldn't see the bigger picture that we see today, the way God was working in his life. He just had to keep trusting and believing and making the next right choice to do what he thought was best. And eventually, years later, it all made sense. Things were made right. He finally saw the bigger picture. The same can be true in our own lives. As we wrap up talking about Joseph and how he forgave his brothers, I want you to think about this question. What is the hardest thing about choosing forgiveness? But I'm gonna take 2 Doritos, okay?
Guys, I don't know about you, but forgiving people is it's so frustrating. And frankly, forgiving people is so difficult. But if we're gonna really see the big picture, and frankly, when we can't see the bigger picture, it's so important for us to be able to forgive. Because forgiveness, 1, it helps us restore relationships with people, and 2, it helps us see what to do next. Sometimes when we're having conflict with people, we can't see what's on the other side of the conflict, and when we can forgive them, it helps us move towards something new. Helps us move towards something better. But I know that forgiveness is one of the most difficult things in the human experience. And so I'm so excited for you guys to head to small groups in just a moment to continue to unpack this idea and talk about what forgiveness looks like in the big picture of your life. Now, I just want to remind you guys of a couple quick things. First one, 8th graders, this is your last Sunday watching Transit Live and being in transit with us. We're going to communicate all of this to your parents, and your small group leaders are going to be reaching out to you as well. But I just want you to know that it has been an absolute pleasure having you join us here in Transit. I hope that your experiences here in Transit have made you better at life, and they've made your life better too. And maybe, just maybe, you've made some great friends along the way. I can't wait for you to experience what Inside Out is going to be like as a high school student. It's going to be incredible. The second thing is for all of you, don't forget that Sunday, September 13th, we are going to be live and in person here at Anthem Church for Transit, and for you 8th graders on Sunday night, September the 13th for Inside Out. It's going to be great. I can't wait to host all of you here. We're going to have live music and so much great stuff going on. But don't forget, if you can't join us live, we are going to find ways and create some really great ways for you to connect with us. Last but not least, don't forget, if you don't know how to get to your small group, fill out that link or text that number at the bottom of our description so we can get you connected to small groups. We have the greatest small group leaders on the face of the earth. I can't wait for you to hang with them. We will see you guys next week for Transit Live.